Hello and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job. So we are playing the intro from we're streaming on Tuesdays, my analytics lecture series at Greensboro College. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go check that out. But we have an exciting guest. So Gilbert, it's been almost a year. So what's been going on in your world?
Yeah, a lot. I think we have a lot to catch up the coming hour on both sides. I think a lot happened and a lot of exciting stuff. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. So you have just continued kind of going down this route of soft skills for, would you say it's like the analytics industry or the data science or like just data people in general?
Yeah, I generally call them my target audience data professionals because in my trainings, I mostly see data scientists, data analysts, but also data engineers, even product owners of data products. And so it's a bit broader than I initially thought, but most of the people are data analysts, data scientists.
Gotcha. So we have our former social media manager here chiming in. So Albert's saying that you guys look alike. I don't see the resemblance. So Albert's saying that Hunter looks like the younger version of you, but I don't see it. What do you guys think?
I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit around here. We have different eye color though. I have brown eyes. Hunter Brown. My last name is Brown. I don't know how they originally came up with it. They looked at the baby's eyes, like, oh, he had brown eyes.
And that's why people are coming to the podcast for those.
There you go. Oh,
yeah. So, Gilbert, give us a high level overview. Like, what are the high points? Because I think you distilled it down kind of into like, bam, bam, bam. This is what you need to know, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mean what I did last year?
Well, I'm saying like, what are the soft skills or what are the major tenets or foundations of soft skills for data professionals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I see are the most important soft skills. I spoke to a lot of people in the industry, both data professionals and also data managers, directors, to understand, okay, what are the most important soft skills for people to learn. And when I say soft skills, you can also think about communication skills. People have different names for kind of the same things, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not have that discussion. But what I found is that there are a few soft skills that are very important. First one is understanding, asking the right questions, and thereby understanding the business. Also getting buy-in from stakeholders, because data professionals work with stakeholders a lot, and you need to get their buy-in to have them rubber stamp what you do, otherwise nothing will happen with your work. And part of that is also persuasion. So you need to be able to persuade other people. And I think a mistake that many data professionals make, and I have made in the past and still make sometimes, is thinking too much about the data instead of thinking about what your stakeholder finds important, what your manager or that marketeer or that director finds important. What are his or her targets? Because that's what matters.
Yeah, I would say that is a huge myth that we're trying to bust on the podcast, that hard skills are going to be the thing that determines the quality of my career. And I think that is very much secondary to hard skills. Feel like interchangeable, like learning Power BI versus Tableau versus R. I mean, you can spend X amount of months to take that, but that's kind of secondary to how are you deploying the skills you have to make an impact on the business. I think that's the skill set that people aren't really, I don't know where that kind of noise came out in the marketplace of hard skills or soft skills.
Yeah, I think that many data professionals, they jump into the data field because they are passionate for data, right? Not passionate for managing stakeholders or how to do presentations, but mostly finding insights. But what frustrates many people, including myself, is that many of those insights, however brilliant they are, however insightful, and maybe potentially useful, if you cannot communicate them, people will not recognize their value. And I think this is something we need to learn and keep on learning and keep on reminding ourselves that it's only about the business impact and helping the business make better decisions instead of finding the best insights according to our definition.
Gotcha. And look who, so Matt Bratton is one of our longtime fans. He's actually an analytics manager, and one of his LinkedIn posts recently was about using data to inform better business strategy. And it just seems like maybe that's like the new iteration. Like all of a sudden there was an explosion of technology and everyone was like, oh, I want all these hard skills. And now that's kind of become it's not a competitive advantage anymore. Everybody can do data visualization, but not everybody can, have a $1 million insight come out of one of their dashboards.
Exactly. And that in the end determines what your worth in terms of career worth, right? If you have those great insights that you found fantastic, but no one else is enthusiastic about, then it's not really making an impact. So that determines your impact and your salary, and eventually.
Gotcha. So in the notes here, one of the things that you mentioned is you need to think about how to ask good or better questions. Elaborate a little bit more on that. What do you mean? What's the importance of that?
Yeah, I think what a tendency is of many data analytics professionals and engineers, if you take it a bit broader, is that many people in that group, including myself, are very passionate about the topic and very enthusiastic and the type of problem solvers. And when someone presents us with a problem, when someone asks us a question to get insights, we are so passionate and we jump into the data without asking enough questions. And therefore, we are solving a business problem that is not actually the problem, because many data or many business people don't really know what they need. They ask a question, but usually it's something else. And it's our job to discover that, to ask the right questions. And there are different frameworks for that. You can use 5 times why, to get to the core, what is actually that you're asking for. So you really need to peel the onion. And also, a few weeks ago, I posted a visual that I created about wants and needs. And many people say they want something. I want to know how many visitors arrive at our websites or how many convert. That's what they say. But usually the need is something else. The why. What do they actually want to measure? Whether a campaign is effective. But by asking questions, open questions, more about the why and what is the high overarching business objective, you get to the core.
Yeah, and see what's interesting as I've kind of matured as a professional, I would say, is that what I've noticed is that a lot of the times, like I totally fell into that of not asking good questions. And it's almost a self-soothing mechanism of, I'm anxious, I'm going to jump right into the problem, I'm going to start solving it before you kind of take a 5,000 foot view and see kind of a survey of what's going on. And that kind of involves the thing that I'm actively trying to cultivate right now in my life is better judgment, because I now have leverage. Like, for example, this podcast. I mean, if I say something that is bad advice, 300 people might take me up on that. And then I said that one time, it goes out to 300 people and negatively impacts their life. So it's an interesting thing that I think a lot of, especially entry-level people, haven't even thought about. Like, there's so much concern about, can I solve the problem versus how can I effectively solve this? Or, and this kind of gets into the idea of systems thinking versus ad hoc thinking. I don't know if have you ever talked much about that?
I haven't talked much about it. I learned a bit about it, but maybe you can tell a bit more about it.
So it's the difference between I can tell you about how I pivoted into the analytics space, actually. So back, man, this was like 5 years ago. I'm starting to get old. So 5 years ago, I took on an internship where I had to build out one line review in Excel. And I pitched the business owner, hey, I can build out a Tableau infrastructure that I can do one time, and it can scale out to all 17 assortments, and we can just refresh it. So it's about building an infrastructure versus having to manually create something. Because if you manually create it, like I tell my students this all the time, the best thing about Excel is that you can, manually input things in and it's easy. the worst thing about Excel is that you can manually input things, and it's easy because you can just type in, for example, an O instead of a 0, and then that might be $1 million that you overbill or underbill a client or something like that.
Right.
So thinking about, all right, I'm going to architect the system and then let that system run, and then maybe have to tinker on it a little bit once it breaks, or if there's some things, and then you take an iterative approach and slowly kind of get it built up.
Exactly, and I think to be able to think in that way, you also need to understand the broader perspective rather than just what the person is asking. You also need to know who else is impacted, or who else is interested in the result of the insight or the data products that you're building. So I think it's very much related. And what helped you to ask better questions?
What helped me? It's funny because I went totally the non-conventional path, and I'm like now that I'm like kind of in a good place now, like looking back, I'm like, I don't think I would advise people going the path that I went. So I went directly from my MBA into private independent consulting, and I was learning projects. I was learning the skill sets and the business acumen, and talking with CEOs, CFOs, CMOs about how they think. Where I started to learn how to ask better questions was just getting to interact with them more and seeing how they think. Because then I could kind of see like, all right, CFOs are very different in how they think about and relate to data than a CMO. CMOs, chief marketing executives, oftentimes like more like visually striking dashboards. CFOs, right, it's almost like they want a table and they want to be able to like filter the table, but because they've been living in Excel for the past, I don't know, 30 years or something like that. So I think that I developed empathy for different kind of departments or domains and realized that, okay, I got to see at a high level how the financials run, how the marketing runs, how the sales team runs, and then realizing that they all kind of wear different hats, and they all can be functional or dysfunctional, and it's interesting seeing how they all kind of fit together. I think that answers your question. So to answer your question, how I learned to ask better questions is just by expanding my consulting agency.
Right. Yeah, and what you're saying is that everyone has this different perspective or frame. The CFO would like to have a more report where he or she can drill down, and a marketeer likes fancy graphs, very generalizing here. But if you understand what's the frame of people, how they see the world, how they perceive it, and what their preferences are, we know how what our data should look like, right? What are the drivers? What are of their decisions? What do they find important? The marketeer finds customer loyalty important and getting new customers, right? The customer service agent maybe slightly different KPIs. And I think by understanding that what other people find important, what drives their decisions, and what type of targets they have, what their bonus is dependent on, we understand so much more of the political environment, and knowing how what type of agendas each person has. And I think it's important because data is cross-functional, right? It's cross-domain, and it's important to understand all those aspects.
To circle back though around, like now that I've kind of digested the question a little bit better, it relates to buy-in. So I learned how to be more empathetic and ask better questions, because if I didn't build out, so essentially the way that I would approach a new consulting client is let's sign a retainer. I will work with you for 1 month. We'll get a very kind of bare bones dashboard up and running. And if it wasn't geared towards something that they would use and they would adopt in their infrastructure, they wouldn't sign on for month 2. So it was very much tied into, can I create something that is appealing to them? If I can, I make money. If I don't, I got to find something else to do. So
right. So you were kind of forced to think in that way, right? And it's probably the quickest way to learn stuff. If you're forced to think that way. I think people that choose a different path, maybe it takes a bit longer, before people realize, hey, maybe my impact is not as big as it could be. What could be the reason? And afterwards, they may discover that it's one of these reasons that they don't gain enough buy-in. They don't, or they ask them questions in the beginning and then work for 3 weeks or 3 months even, and then deliver a product that is not desirable without having these check-ins and checking what's really important for people. I think there's a lot to learn from design thinking for data professionals. It's something I integrate a lot in my trainings.
Tell me a little bit more about, because I've heard of design thinking. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. What is design thinking?
Yeah, so it's a methodology for innovation, and the easiest way to explain it without drawing anything or having any slides is, imagine 3 bubbles, like a Venn diagram, right? Everything is a Venn diagram by now. But 3 bubbles. Feasibility, so that's what technically feasible. And then viability, so what is solving a business problem. And then on top, desirability. And I think where many data professionals operate is in the feasibility circle, because it's where just finding opportunities, just seeing whatever works, what is technically feasible, what data do we have available, more on the technical side. Then on viability is more about the business. So some people, they spend quite a lot of time understanding the business, asking the right questions and getting their buy-in. But what is on top is where not many people operate, because it's desirability. And it's a lot about political interest, agendas, what type of behavioral patterns do people have. And by really understanding the more emotional part, because all people, especially non-data people maybe, are driven by emotions, right? And we need to understand them and pay attention to them. That's what my whole book is about. And so that the bubble on top is where many data professionals do not pay enough attention on. So it's desirability. Is the product that I'm actually building, do people need that behind the want that they're saying?
Right. And see, I realize I have some secret sauce here in that I identify more as an entrepreneur and kind of secondary as a analytics expert or data professional. And I'm realizing almost all my friends, all of our conversations are in that third bubble of desirability, of like, what is the innovation that we can just quickly turn to all of a sudden it opens up a floodgate, and then there's a lot of value that we're creating out in the world, and there's also money that we're able to make off that. Also, we've been neglecting our chat, so we got Tim chiming in here. Back to my comment about if I make some bad advice, the leverage there is going to be a lot of people are going to take it. So yeah, don't listen to me, obviously. Glad to see you here, Tim. And then let's see. So we have Abel, who is agreeing with you. So I can completely agree with Gilbert. But the problem that I face most of the time is that the key decision makers want to see crazy insights even when we don't have enough data. What would you say? What's your advice in that situation?
Yeah, I would try to dig deeper in, because I totally recognize what you're saying. And what I would be interested in is what makes them want those crazy insights. Why do they want them? And what's the reason behind it? Because of course there's a reason they ask them, right? Okay, maybe it's kind of random, but usually there's a reason, and even that reason may not be the actual reason. So I'll try to dig deeper and understand why they want it.
So Matt saying that's might be a poor reflection on leadership potentially.
Yeah, indeed. So if people are asking for crazy insights, I'm not sure what crazy insights mean, right? Is it on topics that are not important, or do they want to find extreme data points to validate and support their own decision making? So we probably need to know a bit more about what those crazy insights are exactly.
So Kusa says, ask for more data, but then this runs into the problem. There might be a mismatch or misalignment between what they want to use data for to drive insights or drive strategy versus the data collection process. So they might not have the data, which is a whole different conversation of, all right, we need to broaden how much data we're collecting. And maybe it's, instead of collecting it every once a month. It needs to be every hour of every day. So that's maybe I'm kind of, Abel hasn't chimed in about elaborating on what he meant, but maybe a crazy insight is I want to know which hour of the day and which day of the week should we push X product. And then you only have biannually, the data is only collected on a yearly basis. It's like there's levels of granularity that you don't have.
Yeah, exactly. And in that case, I think it's important that we understand why that timing is so important, because maybe we can reach, we can come to the same conclusion or reach the same goal that the stakeholder has in mind, that the person has in mind, with different type of data. So I think by understanding why they want to know that timing, maybe there's a different way to reach that.
All right.
I think coming back to your, asking questions, and because I started saying we're passionate, many data professionals are passionate problem solvers. They want to jump in, and you also mentioned about being anxious and wanting to jump into it. And I think that's also a great point, because many data professionals are introverts, and very often data professionals are less senior than the person who is asking for the data. So I think there's a double dynamic going on where people who are introverted and less senior tend to not challenge as much as it would be required to get to a working solution. Mm-hmm. And I think what people need to adopt, the mindset that people need to adopt, is that by challenging and co-creating, you don't need to do it alone, right? You need to work together with the business. They have part of the puzzle and you have as well. Of course, you're the data expert, but they are the business experts. And I think you need to solve that puzzle together. And I think by adopting that mindset, you're also less anxious to challenge and to say, hey, I don't really understand yet. Let's sit down for 10 minutes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there can be a power dynamic different, like depending on the culture of the organization, it may not be couth or socially acceptable for you to say, hey, I can't get this, or hey, we need to change this. Maybe they don't want to know kind of like the lower level. And also too, there's something to be said about, like, if you're entry level and you're coming in, maybe you shouldn't be the one dictating all the data decisions, because it's not like a fully you don't have a 360 degree view, because oftentimes there are hidden costs, and maybe it's something as much as like social capital. Like I don't want to reach out to this other department and have to change the way that they do because I'm not on good terms with their department head or something like that.
Right.
I mean, it gets so complex. And I think if you're looking at it from the bottom level, you don't realize it's almost like a Russian nested doll of like complexity,
Absolutely. And I think step by step you learn a bit more about it. The more experience you get in your career, and also the longer you work for that company, you know more about the dynamics. But I think it stays very difficult. I mean, numbers is easy. People are very, very hard.
Yeah, that's so true. Because you think that like big data, everything's like so elusive and complex, but I mean, like, for example, like buyer behavior, it might be the fact that on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Jenny missed lunch, so she was hungry, so she didn't buy this product. I mean, it's so like there's like just huge amounts of complexity. Oh, look. So Deepak is one of the first people to take our he took all 3 of our case study courses for our platform that we built out this summer. So, and he landed his first Tableau developer job. So Deepak, welcome. So he said,
congratulations.
Yeah. So he said today's topic is very interesting, and I feel currently can't be learnt by anyone in a course, institute, academy. So Gilbert, it's time for you to step up to the plate and pitch yourself. Because you're coming in and like, because I do see soft skills as, it's funny because like all of a sudden now I've been asked to teach 4 college classes next semester. So like, wow. I'm not going to, 4 college classes is a lot, but I do see exactly what he's saying. Like, it's hard to teach the soft skills. I mean, we can do it at Greensboro College in that I'm teaching the capstone course. So I have 2 student groups working with 2 of my consulting clients. So there they get that. Like, for example, they'll say something like, "Dear Mr. So-and-so," and it's like, don't write "dear" in your email. Like, no one says that. So how do you go about teaching soft skills?
Yeah, I think there are some similarities compared to technical skills and some differences. The similarities are that it takes practice. If you need to learn Python coding, it takes you quite a while, and soft skills as well. It's tough, but what soft skills requires is also to reflect on your own behavior and to become more self-aware of how you interact with others and how you come across, and also what are your gaps, because I think we can all resonate with feeling of presenting insights that we think are logical, that we think are well researched, but other people don't listen to it. The business apparently doesn't find it important, and apparently there's a disconnect. So what is important is that there's a lot of reflection. So what helps me a lot is meditation and journaling. Journaling is writing about what happened about certain situations with my manager or with colleagues, or we're doing a presentation. What exactly happened in those situations? What did I do well? What can I improve? And in my training programs, what I find important is that it's not just one session. Of course, you can learn a lot in one session, but what actually gets impact is multiple sessions. So my training program is 3 sessions spread out over 3 months. And in between, there are short videos of 1-2 minutes and encouraging people to put in practice what they learned. For example, the session about business understanding is after people get an email to recap the frameworks that they learned, the type of questions they can ask, and then put in practice what they learned.
Okay. I love that you said practice, because I think that's what it is. It's a daily, weekly, monthly practice. And so Deepak chimed in again and said he feels like the way to bridge that gap is through real world experience, which absolutely. But I mean, you need a certain level of soft skills to even get in the door. So yes, but I think that there's also a lot of space. But for example, like what we're doing this semester, so we're live streaming every Tuesday lecture, and then on Thursday I'm sitting with the students at the beginning of the in-person class, and I'm helping them craft a LinkedIn post about what they learned in the previous week, earlier on in the weeks in the episode. And part of it is just every week having at least one LinkedIn post, because I think that you get into kind of habit formation, and that has a huge return. I think that if you're I don't want to say antisocial, if you're introverted and you're not used to communicating, or kind of like, I think part of what it is, like you were talking about the like the employee manager dynamic, like if you're not used to taking up space and saying, no, I think you're wrong about this, I think we should do X, Y, and Z, that's really uncomfortable, and it's going to take some time for you to kind of reframe how you interact that way. Yeah,
absolutely. And we've spent our whole life building certain patterns, right? Patterns that come back, patterns that we used to. And with these behavioral patterns, they're so tough to break, and it requires getting out of your comfort zone, like you mentioned. It requires you to be able to catch yourself and see, okay, hey, I'm not saying no where I should say no, or I'm being submissive, or other behaviors that you don't want to display, but they go kind of automatic. It's kind of an algorithm, it's very quick. And
that's in your book that you sent me, which was fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, so there in my book, I talk a lot about those algorithms and how to understand your own algorithms, your behavioral patterns. And you need to catch yourself to see, hey, I'm saying yes, but actually I disagree. Or in talking with my manager, I need to be a bit more upfront. And by doing so, after you can implement a new behavior, but it's always difficult. I mean, if you're not used to presenting will make you probably nervous, and you need to present, you need to push yourself. And I think that's the big difference between technical skills and soft skills, is that many people working in data, they are pretty comfortable learning Python. even if it's a beginner course or advanced course, it's kind of within the comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas communication requires a level of vulnerability and showing yourself as well. And I think many people find it even more tough to fill in these situations.
Right. And then I think what they do is they just double down on the hard skills. So maybe it gets back to that self-soothing thing, that the reason that, all these Power BI, Tableau, our courses are so popular is that they're anxious about their career. So they're like, if I just spend 100 hours this month taking Udemy courses, then I'm going to be okay. And it's like, I mean, you will get something, but I feel like it hits a point of diminishing returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And at some point, or I think you get a much stronger profile and a much bigger impact if you develop both. And I've seen it as well with myself and with other people, that of course you need the technical skills, because without the technical skills, maybe you're just a salesperson, as many data professionals would probably say, a car salesman. But while you have some technical skills and developing also some communication skills, you also make sure that those technical skills get the best out of the data, right? Instead of just insights that no one ever uses, which leads to frustration and a lot of other pains.
I mean, it's kind of like a triangle if you think about it. So you have your hard skills, you have your soft skills, and then at the top of the other point is business acumen, in my opinion. So So if you can expand any one of those points out further, it makes the overall triangle bigger.
Exactly. And I think they all interact as well, because if you get better communication skills, you would get closer to the business, you are able to ask better questions, and you get more business acumen. You automatically expand there as well. And I think with the technical skills, they also interact with the other areas.
Is it an isosceles triangle where every single length is a different size?
Sorry again?
I'm going to really stretch out this metaphor. So you don't want to have an ugly looking isosceles triangle where your hard skills are this long, and then your business acumen's this big, and then the other one is trying to like match the difference. Think about kind of how to be a more balanced.
Think about how your triangle can be more of a right triangle, if you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that makes total sense. So the kind of area should be, as large as possible. And
we have such nerds on our channel. Excuse me, it's not isosceles, it's scaling. Thanks, Tina. What? Oh, wow. I shouldn't have pulled that into the chat. That's a terrible pun. What a cute analogy. Also, sorry, Trent. So Trent is super active in our Discord server, and he just did a LinkedIn post earlier today about. So Gilbert, what we've been doing that I think is really cool is we're doing these challenges where it's like, here's data, tag us in it, and we'll critique what you do and give you feedback, and then you can kind of take an iterative approach about getting your work. Because it does multiple things. Because number one, it like broadcasts that you're out there doing work and people can see it, but then you're also growing. So that kind of gets to that personal branding point of do good work in a way that people can see you. So Trent's been super active in that, and I appreciate that. So I think he was talking about where were we talking about?
Yeah, design thinking.
Design thinking, that's right.
Yeah.
So would you agree with this point? So empathize.
100%. No, he's. I think he's totally right. This is what design thinking is, right? And this is the whole process. And I think this is another reason why design thinking is so valuable, because it starts with empathizing what the audience needs, so the business, and understanding that and defining the goal. Because first you need to understand what then is the goal, right? Okay, we have asked all the questions, empathized, but then let's define it. But then not go separate and see each other in 3 months, but stay closely to each other and ideate, state hypotheses, and then try out, and not just in a dark corner, but together with the business. And that's this co-creation mindset I'm talking about. You need both sides, and you, as a data professional, you have part of the puzzle, and but you cannot do it alone.
So
You don't need to. You don't need to as well.
Yeah, he had a follow-up question about this is an interesting one. How would you define an insight?
Good question. I would define an insight as a data point that would help the business make a better decision.
Right.
That's how I would define it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what all of this backs up into is just better decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, what's funny is it's almost like a hard skills arms race with a lot of people in that they want to learn machine learning and algorithms and all that, but it doesn't inform any decision. So it's almost like conspicuous consumption at that point. Like you're just burning off all this energy, and it's just going wildly out into the ether.
Yeah, and in the end, it needs to support the business decision making, right? Otherwise, it's beautiful, a wonderful model and a fancy technique, but it's nothing else, right? And that's eventually what your impact in your career, in your job, is dependent on, whether you help others make better decisions, and whether that's through a dashboard or algorithm or just one number in an Excel sheet, doesn't really matter.
Gotcha. So Deepak's got another question. Is design thinking applicable for all possible fields, applications, industries, or jobs? In the near future, do you see design thinking becoming mandatory for all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's applicable to all industries and mandatory. Not sure what you mean with mandatory. But I think it's incredibly useful tool for data professionals, but also for everyone, everyone that creates something. And as data professionals, we also create something with an end goal. And I think in the past we've built too many big dashboards or too many big models that in the end ended up in an Outlook inbox folder far away, buried under all other priorities.
You know what it kind of is? And I guess this is kind of being a little hyperbolic. It's kind of like being delusional. Like you're essentially built. Okay. So, okay. When I was talking about growing my consultancy, what I would do is build like a very bare bones sales dashboard with like a very, very few KPIs and maybe one or two visualizations. And it was almost like this Trojan horse to get them in to start using it. And then because it was so sparse, they were like, well, what if we had this? What if we had that? And then because I almost feel guilty in that, like, what I've done is just crowdsource all these ideas that don't come from me. They come from executives that I've worked with. So what I could have done, which is like the antithesis of design thinking, is I'm going to spend 6 months cooking up this elaborate dashboard that has all the bells and all the whistles, but it's all coming from me in my own like delusional vacuum. It's not, being, what do they say in like the tech world? Like fail fast. It wasn't like we checked in every week and slowly ratcheted it up. It was, it's just this like almost delusional, like, and I think it gets back to that self-soothing thing. Like I really want to impress this client. So instead of getting something kind of out to them quick, I'm going to just hold it close to me and spend a lot of time and energy just trying to get it configured out like this amazing way and then show it to them.
Exactly. It requires a certain degree of confidence and vulnerability to show the messy product, right? The draft that you have in mind, or the picture on a piece of paper, because you also want to add value and perform. But ironically, maybe the best way to perform is to show something shitty before.
Right. Yeah. And well, because I think that it also kind of does multiple things. So it kind of sets the expectation low, because it's not like, you spend hours building this extra special thing and then that's setting the precedent. It's like, no, this is, I just wanted to get something enough to make sure. It's almost like a communication tool. It's like, hey, I know this isn't finished, but I just wanted you to check in before I move forward.
Yeah.
So it's like it's an opportunity to collaborate as opposed to kind of keep it close to the vest and try to, I don't know, scale it up in your own delusional mind.
Exactly.
All right, so we have some news. So Hunter You've just been sitting there looking pretty this whole episode. It's time for you to step up. So, Gilbert, we just had our first meeting with the client where Hunter is going to take a lead on a consulting project. So, Hunter, how do you feel about it?
I was sitting there listening to this person speak, and I was just getting more and more excited as he was going on. To the point where John David has informed me that I was being entirely too loud in the public space in which we met.
We were at a quiet coffee shop, and Hunter was like progressively getting louder and louder. And I didn't want to like be like, hey, quiet. I didn't want to ruin his fun, but yeah. It was
So something that I've already been comfortable with is getting my work out there. I'm open. I've been open to criticism. I'm known infamously on the channel for getting torn apart in the past with some of my projects. But I think as a result of the experience and the insights that I gained from the people who talked to me in the past, I'm gonna be able to apply a lot of that to this consulting job that I've taken on. And John, you bring up a good point where it's like, okay, it's really easy to get stuck in the analytical mindset where it's like, oh, I just need to make this. I need to make this visualization as interactive as possible. I need the animations to be fluid. I need this. I need that. Where it's like, this client that we're speaking with is extremely interested in the functionality of things and the practicality and how does it actually apply to the business decisions that I'm making right now. So, yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been looking forward to doing for a long time, and I'm excited to be doing it.
Well, so what I wanted to kind of highlight here, so this person owns multiple franchises in a national chain, but he is also has the ear of the owner of the entire company. So, I mean, what do they have, like 150 locations across the United States? I mean, they're relatively big. Yeah. But what I wanted to kind of communicate, and I was, instead of just checking in with you like off air, we can have this conversation on the live stream. I mean, no private information, but what I wanted to kind of highlight is the fact that, Hunter, what you got to see is someone with founder's mentality. He owns the business, so it changes the way that he thinks about it. It's not a manager. It's not a middle manager. It's someone who the way that the decisions are made, either good or bad, impacts his pocket.
Right.
And I think that
looking,
a lot.
Sorry, he's looking for a lot of stuff related to CRM, retention, customer loyalty. Like Gilbert, you were talking about how customer loyalty applies to a lot of businesses earlier, and it's interesting to see how those data that he has, he's looking for somebody who can come in and say, okay, here's the data, here's what I've discovered in it. How can we move forward with this? And he's really excited. He's really excited to be working on it as well. I mean, you were there too, so you know how enthusiastic he was to be.
That's true. It's funny because I just took a back seat and I let them kind of like, they were like two little chatty Cathys just chatting at the storm. Because it's interesting seeing like a business owner who's so interested in the data. Gilbert, I don't know if
do you think it's rare?
I feel like it is rare. Maybe it's the fact that I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and it's a city in the deep South that's got a population of 300,000 people. So maybe, I mean, are you in a much larger city?
I'm in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. So it's our biggest city, but it's not even a million.
Right. I mean, so what about the business owners that you run across there? Would you say they're more data?
Pretty data driven, I would say. Most of the business owners that I know, they founded companies in the last, say, 15 years. So they kind of born in this age, right? I don't know so many people who founded a business 40 years ago who kind of need to adapt. And of course, it depends on the industry. I work with a lot of data. You're not too late, Nikita.
Also, we got Tim cringing at the fact that I said, so Tim runs Code for Greensboro, which is a nonprofit that's does civic data in Greensboro. Tim, are we not in the deep South? I think we're in the deep South. But also, and welcome.
I think the more south you go, like into Florida, the more north you get. So I think right around Georgia, going up to North Carolina, maybe Virginia. I don't know. I consider that deep south in my book.
Sorry, we totally got distracted. So entrepreneurs in Amsterdam.
Entrepreneurs in Amsterdam.
Okay,
I think quite a lot of business owners that I know at least are pretty data driven and data savvy as well.
So what you said, so you said they've started businesses within the past 15 years. So an insight about this specific geographic area is that there's a lot of manufacturers that have been around for 50 to 100 years. So I've kind of carved out a niche in the fact that finding people who are extremely data centric in that specific niche is somewhat rare. But it's worth millions of dollars if they can effectively start to connect. Because what's interesting is that it's being data driven or data informed in your decision making can be a competitive advantage in one niche, and in another, it's like everyone else is this way. Like it's not an advantage. But I think it's only a matter of time until all of the industries are adopting
They have to. But for some, especially those bigger companies who were not forced in the past yet, they have to move as well. But it takes so long because data is everywhere. They have so many different systems. IT is a mess, and they're not very easy on their feet, of course, because it's difficult to change a company which is huge. I see what you mean.
And we can go a little bit into you're talking about legacy systems and the problems it poses to a data model, right? So actually, I don't know, Hunter, have we talked about this at all?
I'm not sure. You want to touch on it a little bit?
So actually, Gilbert, I'll let you take the stage. So what problems do legacy systems, which Hunter, a legacy system, okay, let's say, Hanes brand has been around. They're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's 30 minutes away. They've been around for like 150 years. They've been collecting data probably for 100 years. Do you think the system that they initially collected data with maps well into, like, I don't know, the ERP system that they implemented 3 years ago?
Well, I'd imagine not, but
Right.
I have a slight question about that. So, the way that I hear that, it's like, would the business over time, as new soft tech is developed, would the business just transfer data over time, or do a lot of I mean, this is speaking from a lack of experience. Do a lot of those businesses just kind of stick with those old systems and then they fling it on the analyst, and it's like, okay, here's all the data that we have. Figure out a way to clean it up and make it new. Like, how does that work nowadays?
I think it depends on the situation. Sometimes that happens, like you described. Sometimes they try to convert it to newer systems or integrate everything. But because it's such a mess. There are so many different systems. Sometimes the data is so old that there's no one to validate, if that data is trustworthy or not. And of course, you can research a little bit yourself, but sometimes you don't have that context anymore. So there's so many issues, and often it's unknown, who's then the data owner of those legacy systems. No one really knows. So even finding out the people that know more about that data can take weeks.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is that the person who created the data system might have not documented what they did. So there's like within these billion-dollar companies, there might be $12 billion or 12 billion rows of data that's just in a database that no one knows how to access because there's no map to it. Those situations that's not the game that I'm playing. Like my clients are, I think they're doing about 150 million in revenue. Or actually, no, they grew. So we're doing consulting work with clients that are like 200 million in revenue or less. So they don't have these massive. So I mean, think about like I'm rooting down on Hanes just because you know what Hanes brand, right? Like the apparel company.
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
See, because you're in Europe, so I guess you don't. They're like one of the massive major apparel companies in the United States, and they're not too far away. But I mean, what's the big apparel company in Europe? Like Uniqlo?
I don't know Uniqlo.
Who do you?
I shopped at the Suit Supply yesterday. I got some new shirts, but it's a Dutch brand. It's in the US as well, but it's not that big.
So, okay, but imagine how much data Suit Supply has. And imagine if they've been around for 100 years. I mean, that gets really, really mad. And it's funny because I don't really want to play that game. I don't want to be in that world.
Which world do you want to be in?
So, okay. I mean, we could talk about the platform. So we developed a learning platform over the summer. And what's interesting about that is that I am tracking all of the data. I'm tracking psychographic data. I built the entire system myself from the ground up. So I got to architect it, which is awesome. But what's also interesting, it's kind of like it gets a little meta in that I'm now taking data from that system and then we're analyzing it in class. So it's like a huge I wouldn't say it's not a huge data set, but it's very robust. So there's a lot of information. So we're starting to test ads now, so we can see which ads are promoting which projects or products, and then what is the buyer journey. We can see that all in Google Analytics. So yeah, the space that I'm interested in is kind of like newer business. Like you were saying, your friends have started a business within the past 15 years. So let's walk through an example of if I wanted to start a mom and pop's shop, like let's say it was a retail shop, like selling clothes on downtown. If I started it this year, I would be collecting all of my point of sale data with Stripe. All that data is automatically collected and it's clean. I mean, maybe every once in a while it's going to be corrupted, but thinking about how they did it before, like 30 years ago, you would just write it down. And I mean, there are a ton of problems with that. And then, I mean, I guess they would write it down and then somebody would hard code it into Excel and then maybe do some analysis. They probably didn't even get that far though,
No, indeed. There are a lot of problems with it.
All right. So Matt Bratton wants to know, how is entrepreneurial life treating you?
Nice question, Matt. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I've been an entrepreneur for 1.5 years now, but for some time also as a part-time business owner. So I was still an employee at Capgemini, and after I quit my job completely, there was so much more space in my head to think and to create new stuff, to create concepts, to write LinkedIn posts, to think about, okay, how should I reach clients and how can I best teach soft skills to analytical people, and what are the challenges, and more time to talk about challenges as well. What are exactly the challenges that data professionals face, and that gives me so much joy. What I love the most is helping people grow and getting a message from someone, individual, saying, hey, I've been to your workshops and this is what I learned. That's why I do my work. That's why in the end, if I look back at my professional life, these are the moments I remember, the individual contribution to someone else's growth. And yeah, so I'm very passionate about what I do, and entrepreneurial life is fantastic. I can decide what I do, what I work on. I meet a bunch of great people, so I'm really enjoying it.
Also, we need to share.
Surprises. Oh yeah, one thing I will share a surprise. Many people ask me, hey, don't you want to do this together? And I work together with many people, but not they're not employees, right? So in that sense, I'm by myself, but it feels so connecting with other people all over the world, with other entrepreneurs, with people I work with companies I work with. So that's maybe the biggest surprise. Thanks, Matt.
Okay. All right, man, we have some good questions coming in, but I did want to touch on, all right, let's touch on this right now. So you sent me this, which is really cool. So soft skills for data professionals. This is your maturity model. Mm-hmm. So you want to talk about this?
Yeah, let me run through it. So what I did, I interviewed a lot of data professionals, a lot of leaders in the industry to find, okay, what are the most important communication skills, soft skills, and how can people grow, to put that into a model. And what I show here is that you have 4 models. First is more operational support, where you're just kind of supporting and doing what people want. Service provider, you think a bit more about the business. Consultant, you look a bit broader, not just about the requests you get, but also from a broader perspective. How can I advise people with the data, with the knowledge of the data and the knowledge of the business? An entrepreneur is looking at new opportunities and building those new opportunities, selling the business case to the business. And of course, all these steps have different pillars.
Wow. I feel like I've gone through these steps. I think I'm level 4.
Congratulations. Yeah, you made it.
There. Well, so we built the platform, and then one of the revenue models is that we're going to build out a certification program for Greensboro College. So it's going to be a revenue stream that we split with each other.
Right.
So that's an example of an entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like entrepreneurship within an organization.
Exactly. That's what entrepreneurship means.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody. Well, I was talking to a CFO of a pretty prestigious, like a pretty name brand company. And he was saying that if you can get to that entrepreneur stage and you're a C-suite executive, it's a pretty cushy life. It's like, because you have that security of the full-time job, but you get to do novel things. Because the reason that I don't think I could be employed in a traditional sense is that it's not novel enough. Like it would be boring. Like I just wouldn't. I feel like I would get tired of it.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, like right now you're in the entrepreneurship light. Like you see all the different opportunities, and it's like every day feels different. To where I don't know if I could go to it. Well, I tried doing a 9 to 5, and I couldn't do it.
No, then probably you're not made for it, or at least you found something else. Mm-hmm. So yeah, these are the steps, and if we go down a bit, it's with on the slides, it's quite detailed, so we don't need to go in everything, but just on to see the different pillars. So the first one is ability to talk with stakeholders and understand business problems. So if you're at the bottom, you may just give the data people ask for, and all the way at the top is business empathy. So really finding the question behind the question.
So can we pause here? I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
So is this one thing that I've realized that I do, and I think this might be because, like you said, being a used car salesman, I sold insurance. So I mean, I wasn't far off. But what you do when you want something is, I mean, and maybe this is like a little Machiavellian or manipulative, but when talk about things in terms of what other people want. So it's like, I know that this is a pain point for you, and then build them a solution that also benefits yourself. But if you lead with, hey, this is what I want, that could come off as really abrasive. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I think we always need to. Life becomes so much easier if we first think, okay, what does the other person need? And of course, we have needs ourselves, right? We need to be assertive, and you need to get your own needs met in life in general. But if you think about business, we need to think way more about what do the other people need? What drives their decisions? How can I help them? Mm-hmm. And what we usually do, I think what is the inclination of almost every person is to think in our own head, what's going on there, and overthink stuff. And I think making that shift helps to get what you just described, is to understand their perspective. So, and they will appreciate your work much more as well, because they have the feeling this person can help me, instead of this person is just this data guy who doesn't understand me, and I don't understand what he does or she does.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also too, like, instead of like I'm on one side of the table and you're on the other, and we're negotiating aggressively, it's like, all right, let's just come to the same side of the table and we're partnering. I think Absolutely. That is a really good frame. And then that way it's like, we're in this together. You're my person. I'm your, like, I mean, it
Absolutely.
Feels, yeah. Like, I don't know how to.
Let me take one thing.
Okay. Man, these infographics are sharp. Hunter, we got to get on this. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. It's really clean. Also, Natika wants you to pronounce Gilbert's last name.
Yeah, right. Go for it, John David.
So, okay, we need to run through the lore of the podcast. So I called her Nikita for about 2 months, I think. And what's funny is that I'm terrible at pronouncing names, and we seem to be getting an increasingly international audience. So like the people from Nigeria, I have a hard time pronouncing their name. So all right, let me pronounce. Is it Eijkelenboom?
Yeah, not bad. It's
Okay.
Eijkelenboom. Yeah.
Eijkelenboom.
It's pretty
I want
close
to
on the
put
second attempt. It was pretty close.
Eijkelenboom. All right. There,
That's it.
I've been a little monkey and I've done a little dance for you guys. I hope you're happy.
I tried to put the chat, the link in the chat, by the way, to the full model.
Okay.
But I put it in private chat, so maybe you can put it in the chat,
Hunter,
John David.
Can you handle that?
I'm actually not. Or wait, hold on. Oh yeah, I see.
It's in the private chat.
Yeah, I've got
That's
it.
right.
Actually, Hunter, can you put it as a comment down below? Because that'll be easier for people to see.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So what I wanted to share, you triggered me, John David, when you said, okay, you kind of need to come to the same side, right? Instead of sitting onto each other and having this discussion and being aggressive. I think what happens very often is this, because this is where we are, the data professional. I hope you can see it.
It's
Maybe we need to stop sharing.
Oh, right. Yeah, let me do that.
Otherwise, it's very small. So this is where we are, the blue person. And here on the other side of the table, we have the red one. And what we see here is 61, right? And we have this discussion about what we see, and you cannot really agree. But only once you get to the other side of the table and the person said, no, you're wrong. Only if you get to the other side of the table, you see, okay, that person also sees something, which is also valid. And I think, of course, this is a very simplistic example, but it shows that often there are two ways of looking at things, and they have their own perspective. And even if you're right, it's worth listening to that person and understanding his or her perspective, because people get very emotional if they think they're right. And if you say that you're right, it's only getting worse, right? So drop your own thoughts and walk to the other side of the table, understand the perspective of the other person, and then use that information about his or her world to convince him or her.
So use that information against them. Got it.
Against them, exactly.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and create a win-win. That's
right.
That's what we need to do.
See, and this kind of circles back to the concept of judgment, because there are multiple solutions to any given problem, but which one is the most efficient, or which one is the appropriate one? Because it may not actually be the most efficient option. It may be the one that is sustainable. Because I mean, for example, like working 80 hours a week, I can get a bunch of work done, but I can only do that 2 weeks in a row before I'm done. So it's but I mean, so I flew out to Santa Barbara 4 weeks ago to record a couple more courses for LinkedIn. I had to do a bunch of updating the courses, and man, that week was brutal, but it was just like one sprint. So so it's sometimes you make,
and it needs to be sustainable. I see what you mean there, because your solution, your insights, or your data model, your algorithm needs to fit in the business processes. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. And maybe the best model may not be the model with the largest impact, if you know what I mean. The one with the best accuracy, because people don't want to use it for some reason. There's a lot of emotion and people get frustrated, and if they don't use it, the impact is zero. So it's worth paying attention.
All right. Do you want to? We can pull back up that, because I feel like there were multiple things that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, sure.
Should
I pick it up?
Thing. Yeah, pick it up.
Yeah. So the first one we got, and then the second one is about stakeholder management and gaining buy-in. So as a data professional, why do people listen to you? They listen because they trust that you can help them. And if you don't have this trust, if you don't have this reputation of being helpful, then people won't listen. And on the bottom, you see limited stakeholder involvement. I think many data professionals are not involved enough, don't understand enough what the business wants, and therefore the level of trust is also low. And they will be less likely to be asked to contribute, to a meeting with the management team, to get some insights that will help them make decisions. So that's the second one.
I have a question. How do you build trust? Because I have a feeling it's very similar to how you build confidence.
Right.
So I
I
guess
don't know
confidence
about
is
that.
self-trust, right?
Yeah, it's confidence is self-trust. Well, I think some confidence is not saying I have all the answers, I know everything, but more, no matter what happens, I'll be okay. That would be my definition of self-confidence.
Wait, say that
So,
again.
no matter what happens, I will be okay.
Okay. I was thinking about more, I guess, situational confidence. Like, I can do this.
Mhm.
I can pull off this job, or
Right.
because I think a lot of people, specifically in our audience, is imposter syndrome.
Right.
But I mean, that's like a whole side tangent. So yeah, how do you build trust?
Yeah, it's funny because there's one man. He came up with a formula of trust, and the first time I saw this, it was really interesting because trust is this fluffy concept, right? This abstract concept. You don't really know what it is. But the formula of trust, what he said is, trust is equal to C plus I plus R divided by S. So C plus I plus R divided by S. And what the letters stand for is credibility. So what is your reputation? Do people believe you? Reliability. Can people trust that you deliver and in time? And I is intimacy. So will they also share secrets and their worries with you?
It's like the Benjamin Franklin effect a little bit, right?
I don't know the Benjamin Franklin effect, so
Well,
I'm going to learn something today.
I guess the Benjamin Franklin effect is if someone does something for you, they're more likely to like you because they can't deal with the cognitive dissonance of he's a bad person, but I've helped him. But I guess that's not necessarily intimacy, but it is kind of vulnerability in a way.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think it's related indeed. And then on the bottom there's the S of self-orientation. So if you have a high degree of self-orientation, you care about your own goals, you look after your own interest only, then the trustworthiness goes down. So again, trust is equal to credibility, reliability, intimacy divided by self-orientation.
Wait, okay. My answer was much simpler. It was just demonstrated performance. That's how you build confidence. It's how you build trust. Like you get that small win in, and then you slowly ratchet it up.
Right, absolutely, and I think that's part of it. You need to do that, right? And I think there are more ways, but this is the quickest way, I think, to win that trust. And I think what's important there is that we, as data professionals, champion our work and show what are the results, not to brag, saying, "Hey, I improved this metric by 20% thanks to my insights," but to show others, to educate other teams and departments what other possibilities with data and what you can do to help them as well.
Okay, this is a little bit of a self-serving question here, but have you thought much about lending your credibility to someone else? So concrete example that's extremely relevant is that, I mean, we just sat down with a business owner. I mean, they're doing I think 9 figures in revenue. Me and Hunter. I mean, Hunter, you're great. You look like Doobie Howser though. I mean, you're super young looking. But what was awesome though is that this business owner of this large company was like, "Yeah, Hunter, I want you to come build out this system." And I was, to be full disclosure, I was a little anxious that he was it wasn't gonna go as smoothly as it did. But Hunter, you stepped up, and I'm proud of you. But
Thank you.
what essentially, okay, so let me tell you about how this person took my LinkedIn courses, found out that we were in the same town, and was like, "Oh, one of the leading experts in analytics is, a mile away from me. Let me sit down with him." So that, as far as credibility, I don't know if you're going to get any bigger than that. Because I mean, LinkedIn's a huge platform. But I mean, I'm kind of amazed at the fact that I've removed myself from the situation, and he's talking directly with the client now. Right. That's wild to me.
Yeah, and I think, it could happen because of various reasons. I think First of all, because Hunter did a great job. Apparently he came across as confident and as I can handle the job, and also what can help is that if he trusts you, John David, then he automatically assumes that the people you work with are good as well, can help him to get the results he's after. So this is kind of the implied credibility that you're talking about, I think, right?
So it's like trust by association.
By association,
So
yeah,
this
absolutely.
this kind of circles back to branding, which is something that I'm actively trying to like wrap my head around. Which I've improved my brand recently, and I'm seeing kind of the waves that it's echoing out in the world. It's bringing more opportunity, but essentially that can be packaged up for those who are listening about how to get an analytics job. Build out a portfolio that can hugely improve the amount of trust that you have going into an interview or going into a consulting project, because they can see what you've done.
Absolutely, and everyone is trying to minimize risk in business,
Right.
Because business, and everyone tries to minimize risk. So if they see something, if they see testimonials or they see your work, what you have done in the past, they have less. There's less assumptions they need to make, and the jump will be not as big. So I think you're spot on.
So actually, maybe we need to rescind what we said about trust. It was the fact that Hunter's just captivating. That's what it is. He captivated the client. So persuasion, influence, and storytelling. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's do it. So I like the bridge there. Yeah, what I think many data professionals who just start off, they focus on more the technical side, the technical details. They talk in jargon. They don't understand what really matters to the business, and don't speak the language. While a more experienced person on top, the entrepreneur level, knows how to use storytelling as well. So not talking so much about the data, but more about not saying, "Hey, I see the customer retention is 20% down, and I also see that social media engagement is 20% down." But saying, "I see the retention is 20% down, and social media engagement is also 20% down. So let's look what happened here. Let's take an example, John. So John is a customer, and he was waiting on the phone for 45 minutes. He was about to convert to buy even more, but then he got so frustrated and so fed up with it that he hung up the phone and went to the competitor. So small things like that with characters in their stories help to get your message across and be captivating instead of just throwing that dry data over the fence.
Well, you know what this is making me think of? There's this quote, I think it's from either World War I or World War II. Some general or some politician said, "One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic."
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why charity organizations, they don't speak a lot about those 20,000 people in Kenya who are starving. Now they talk about one person, Marlene, who has 2 kids, 32 years old, who is trying to escape starvation. And they try really zooming in on that. And I think we can do the same as data professionals, zooming in on one specific point that makes people relate to the situation. And the heroes or the characters that we need to choose in our stories are not our audience. So if you talk to salespeople, you don't talk about them and you don't make yourself the hero, but you make the people they care about the hero, which is prospects. So people that are about to get clients, right? So that's what salespeople want. They want to convert them. So if you talk about them, how they cannot convert due to something, or if you have an insight how people have a more likelihood to convert, then you help them reach their goals. So I think by implementing those kind of storytelling techniques, you show that you understand their problems and their goals, and you help them reach them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that influence is it's a new form of currency that we haven't quite wrapped our heads around. Because especially it can scale up now with social media and the internet in a way that you'd have to have like a full news team to do before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and you can reach people all over the world. I mean, we're having this conversation, right, overseas.
That's true. So let's see. Did you want to go through this whole?
No,
subject?
not the whole thing. People can on mindspeaking.com. You can find the whole maturity model, but this is a bit too much to go into. But
Okay.
the next one, yeah, we can just have a quick look at the last part.
Yeah, for those who are live, it's posted in the Discord. For those who are watching the video after the fact, it's going to be down in the comments below. So just check down there for all this information.
Did you want me to go down or up?
Yeah, this one with mindset.
Okay.
I'll just briefly touch upon these. So 4 pillars. First is focus. Are you focused on using the fancy technologies or business results? And then the second one is about educational role. Of course, as a data professional, you have a lot of technical knowledge, a lot of data knowledge, and all of the company would benefit from you sharing that, and not just sharing the technical knowledge, but also sharing how people can get value from data and educating them. And of course, they need to learn more about data literacy programs, you have them. But also, I believe data professionals also need to have this educational role and share their knowledge, not just within the team, which is more on the lower end, but also to other people. Then the third one is about initiative and impact. So are you mostly concerned with your own, within your own role, or are you impacting the whole organization? The last one is humility. I included that because I heard from so many people that I think data professionals, they like to have logical insights, right? And I think when people think they have the right answer, sometimes they become a bit stubborn and a bit, sometimes a bit even condescending towards people who are not as technically adept or not as much data knowledge. And I think it's fundamentally wrong because I touched upon this a few times in the last hour, that we need to have a co-creation mindset. We, working in data, have part of the solution, but we need to understand the business to understand how the data can help them make better decisions.
Gotcha. This is awesome. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting, I just had a conversation with a developer about kind of like I think they called them the corporate stooges, and it's the managerial class. It's like a whole class of people and a whole mindset. And I think part of it gets into like underlying values. Like they are very, very high in orderliness and industriousness. So they want everything, they work really hard and they want everything organized, to where like if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a developer, if you're kind of like maybe even a data professional, you want to explore and you want to bust out of things. So there's some tension there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you need to be able to deal with the tension. And I think a lot of that tension you need soft skills for, because without soft skills, you cannot really deal with the tension. You either escape from it, or you go full on and you will make get to a lot of damage.
Are you talking about like it's fight or flight? Like you either fight or you flight?
Yeah, I think so. If you don't really know what you can do, what your options are, and soft skills there's a lot of nuance, right? If I imagine I don't want to work with you anymore, or only in certain areas, I need to have a tough conversation, right? Saying, John David, this is what I like about our collaboration, but and this part I don't really want to do anymore. It's a tough conversation, and all kinds of tough conversations you need to have if you want to grow as a data professional.
That's true. I think Tim Ferriss said the success you have or the quality of your life is dependent on how many uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have.
Yeah, I like that. I like Tim Ferriss as well.
It's funny. I fell off with him, but he definitely changed the trajectory of my life with the 4-hour work week. I read that when I was like 22, and I was like, wow, this is wild.
Got you on the entrepreneurial path.
Yeah, he did. Awesome. So Gilbert, thank you so much for your time. Do you have where can people find you? Do you have anything else that you want to shout out?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn if you were able to spell my last name. But John David, just follow his pronunciation.
Yeah. Just read the phonetic spelling of that.
Exactly. But if you find Mind Speaking, you'll find Gilbert, and that will be me. Yeah, you'll find more information on mindspeaking.com. I'm mostly focused on giving trainings for companies right now. I do have one workshop still coming up on the 30th, which is about buy-in, gaining buy-in and persuasion. On the 30th, I believe there's one spot left. So if you like to attend, you can let me know, or just buy a ticket on mindspeaking.com. And yeah, looking forward to connect with more people and talk about these topics. I think there's so much we can learn, and learning every day gives a lot of satisfaction, for me at least, and I think for many people are curious. So let's keep on learning.
Awesome. Well, Gilbert, this has been fantastic. I always enjoy our conversations. So thank you so much for coming on. I'll see you later.
Thanks a lot.